Hi all, welcome back to a new session. Today we are going to discuss about a new topic, fetal skull and maternal pelvis. Fetal skull. Fetal skull is to some extent compressible and made mainly of thin pliable tubular or flat bones forming the vault. This is anchored to the rigid and incompressible bones at the base of the skull. So it is very compressible and pliable bonds forming the vault. The areas of the skull, these are first is vertex. It is a quadrangular area bounded anteriorly by the bregma or the anterior fontanelle and the coronal sutures behind by the lambda and lambdoid sutures and laterally by lines passing through the parietal eminences. Next is brow. It is an area bounded on one side by anterior fontanelle and coronal sutures and on the other side by root of nose and supraorbital ridges of either side. Next is face. It is an area bounded on one side by root of nose and supraorbital ridges and on the other by the junction of the floor of the mouth with neck. So you can see in this picture. So various important landmarks. First you can see the root of nose, the glabella. Then from there to the bregma or anterior fontanelle, the area is called sinciput. And from anterior fontanelle to the posterior fontanelle, the area is called vertex. And from posterior fontanelle to suboccipital region, it is called occiput. So various bones are frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital bones, and between this occipital and parietal bone you can see lambdoid suture. So these are the different important landmarks. Sinciput is the area lying in front of the anterior fontanelle and corresponds to the area of brow, and occiput is limited to the occipital bone. Now we discuss about the sutures. Sagittal or longitudinal suture lies in between two parietal bones. So you can see on this picture. So between two parietal bones, the central one is a sagittal suture. The coronal sutures runs between parietal and frontal bones on either side. That also is there on this picture. Next is frontal suture lies between two frontal bones. So this is only seen in the neonates or newborns. Later on it will get ossified and to become a single bone. Then lambdoid suture separate the occipital bone and two parietal bone. All these are given in this picture. You can just observe the picture and understand the concept. The importance. It permits gliding movement of one bone over the other during molding of head, a phenomenon of a significance while head passes through the pelvis during labor. So you might have heard the term molding. So it is a phenomenon where the head passes through the pelvis during labor. There will be gliding of one bone over the another to reduce the size of the passenger. Next is digital palpation of sagittal suture during internal examination in labor gives an idea of the manner of engagement of the head, degree of internal rotation of the head and degree of molding of head. So all these are the importance of the different sutures. Now we discuss about the fontanelles. What are fontanelles? Fontanelles are wide gap in the suture lines, and there are mainly 6 fontanelles. Out of these, 2 are of obstetric significance. So we are having significance for the first 2 fontanelles, that is anterior fontanelle or bregma and posterior fontanelle or lambda. So we will discuss about the anterior fontanelle. It is formed by joining the 4 sutures in the midplane. The sutures are anteriorly frontal, posteriorly sagittal and on either side by coronal. The shape is like a diamond. The anteroposterior and transverse diameters measures approximately 3 cm each. The floor is formed by a membrane and it becomes ossified by 18 months after birth, that is 1.5 years. It becomes pathological if it fails to ossify even after 24 months. So this is a picture. We can see the same picture of anterior and posterior fontanelle. So what are the importance of anterior fontanelle? Its palpation through internal examination denotes the degree of flexion of head. Second one, it facilitates molding of the head. Third one, as it remains membranous long after birth, it helps in accommodating the marked brain growth. As we all know, the brain growth happens in the first 2 years of life. So during that period, the skull will have to accommodate the growing brain. So these fontanelles will help to accommodate the growing brain. Then palpation of the floor reflects intracranial status, that is depressed in dehydration and elevated in raised intracranial tension. Collection of blood and exchange transfusion on a rare occasion can be performed through this anterior fontanelle, and it is from the superior longitudinal sinus we are taking blood. Then cerebrospinal fluid, that is CSF, can be drawn through this route from the angle of the anterior fontanelle from the lateral ventricle. So these are the various importance of anterior fontanelle. Now we are discussing about posterior fontanelle. It is formed by junction of three suture lines, that is sagittal suture anteriorly and lambdoid suture on either sides. So its shape is triangular. So it is triangular in shape, and measurement is 1.2 into 1.2 centimeter, that is almost half into half inch. Its floor is membranous but becomes bony at term. Thus, truly, its nomenclature as a fontanelle is misnomer, because by birth it is almost ossified. So it can be called as a fontanelle, and it is called as a fontanelle, and it is said that it is a misnomer. It denotes the position of the head in relation to maternal pelvis. So these are the important diameters of the skull. You just go through this slide. Suboccipitobregmatic, that is extends from the nape of the neck to the center of the bregma. So that's why suboccipitobregmatic, and the measurement is about 9.5 centimeter. And when this is the engaging diameter, the attitude is complete flexion. Suboccipitofrontal, next diameter, extends from the nape of the neck to the anterior end of the anterior fontanelle or center of the sinciput, and the measurement is 10 centimeter. That is incomplete flexion is the attitude. Then occipitofrontal extends from the occipital eminence to the of the nose or glabella, that is 11.5 centimeter, and marked deflection. Mendovertical, that extends from the midpoint of the chin to the highest point on the sagittal suture. The measurement is 14 centimeter, and partial extension is the attitude. Next is submendovertical, that extends from the junction of the floor of the mouth and neck to the highest point on the sagittal suture. The measurement is 11.5 centimeter, and the attitude is incomplete extension. Submendobregmatic diameter, that is extending from the junction of the mouth and neck to the center of bregma. The measurement is 9.5 centimeter. Complete extension is the attitude. And in submendovertical and submendobregmatic, the presentation is face, and in the mendovertical the presentation is brow, and all other three is the presentation. So you can see various diameters in this picture. Occipitofrontal, then you can see suboccipitofrontal, then submendobregmatic, suboccipitobregmatic, then mendovertical. The longest one is mendovertical diameter, that is around 14 centimeter. So this is a picture showing various diameters. Then molding. What is molding? You can see in this picture. It is the alteration of the shape of the forecoming head while passing through the resistant birth passage during labor. Molding disappears within few hours after birth. The mechanism: there is a compression of the engaging diameter of head with corresponding elongation of the diameter at right angle to it. You can see the picture. There is a compression and elongation happening. Next term is caput succedaneum. So you might have heard this term very much. What is caput succedaneum? It is the formation of swelling due to stagnation of fluid in the layers of scalp beneath the girdle of contact. The swelling is diffuse, boggy, and is not limited by the suture line. and that is the difference between cephalhematoma and caput succedaneum. It is not limited by the suture line in caput. It disappears spontaneously within 24 hours after birth. So you can see in this picture, it's above the periosteum and it is not limited by any suture line. So caput is formed by serum. Next is about the maternal pelvis. The pelvis is anatomically divided into false pelvis and a true pelvis, the boundary line being the brim of the pelvis. The bony landmarks on the brim of the pelvis from anterior to posterior on each side are upper body symphysis pubis, then pubic crest, pubic tubercle, pectineal line, iliopubic eminence, iliopectineal line, sacroiliac articulation, anterior border of ala of sacrum and sacral promontory. So you can see all these landmarks there. 1, 2, 3. You have mentioned all these things in this picture. You can just pause the video and watch and understand the various landmarks on this pelvis. Next is false pelvis. What is false pelvis? The false pelvis is formed by iliac portions of the innominate bones and is limited above the iliac crest. It has got little obstetric significance. Its only obstetric function is to support the enlarged uterus during pregnancy. Its boundaries are posteriorly lumbar vertebrae and laterally iliac fossae and anteriorly anterior abdominal wall. Next is regarding true pelvis. This part of pelvis is chiefly of concern to the obstetricians as it forms the canal through which the fetus has to pass. It is shallow in front, formed by symphysis pubis and measures 4 cm, that is 1.5 inch, and deep posteriorly, formed by sacrum and coccyx and measures 11.5 cm, that is about 4 inches. For descriptive purpose, it is divided into inlet, cavity and outlet. So this is the picture of the pelvis. You can see various different diameters of obstetrical significance of the inlet. So this is another picture about the brim or the inlet, cavity and outlet and various diameters. You can see the anteroposterior, oblique and transverse diameter. You can remember if you are known with this table, the anteroposterior diameter of the brim, cavity and outlet 11, 12 and 13. The oblique diameter all are 12 and transverse diameter you can see in the opposite of the anteroposterior diameter, that is 13, 12 and 11. So this is how we can learn this particular diameters. The inlet is the brim of the pelvis. The circumference of the inlet is formed by bony landmarks. We have already mentioned about that landmarks. The shape is almost round in gynecod pelvis and various other types of pelvis are there. We will be discussing that in another video. So the anteroposterior diameter of this pelvis is being the shortest. The plane is referred to as superior straight. Inclination: in erect posture, the pelvis is tilted forward. As such, a plane of inlet makes the angle of about 55 degree with the horizontal and is called angle of inclination. So it's very important, 55 degree with the horizontal. Another way of measuring the inclination is radiographically, to take the angle between the plane of the inlet and front of the body of the fifth lumbar vertebra. The angle is normally about 135 degree. The inclination is increased due to sacralization of fifth lumbar vertebrae and it is called high inclination. High inclination has got obstetrical significance as it can delay the engagement of the head of the baby or the presenting parts. The angle of inclination may be lessened in case of lumbarization of the first piece of sacral vertebrae and it is called low inclination. It has got no obstetric significance. Next is regarding the sacral angle. It is the angle formed by the true conjugate with the first two pieces of the sacrum. Normally, it is greater than 90 degree. You can see in this picture. Axis is a mid-perpendicular line drawn to the plane of the inlet. Its direction is downward and backward. As already we are told, it is tilted around 55 degree with the horizontal. That's why it's downward and backward. Then anteroposterior diameter, or it's otherwise called true conjugate or anatomical conjugate or conjugate vera. It is the distance between the midpoint of the sacral promontory to the inner margin of the upper border of symphysis pubis. The measurement is 11 cm. We can see various diameters in this picture also. So true conjugate, you can see the black one on the top. Next is the diagonal conjugate. So you can see the a bluish green one, the third one from the top. The diagonal conjugate, it is the distance between lower border of the symphysis pubis to the midpoint on the sacral promontory. It measures around 12 centimeter. Next is obstetric conjugate. It is the distance between the midpoint of the sacral promontory to the bony projection in the midline on the inner surface of the symphysis pubis. So you can see the obstetric conjugate, that is the middle one in the first three. That is the red one in the first three. Obstetric conjugate is computed by subtracting 1.5 to 2 centimeter from the diagonal conjugate. Next is regarding the cavity. Cavity is the segment of pelvis bounded above by the inlet and below by the plane of least pelvic dimensions. Its plane is called the plane of greatest pelvic dimensions. The cavity plane is called a plane of greatest pelvic dimensions. Regarding the outlet, obstetrical outlet, it is a segment of pelvis bounded above by the plane of least pelvic dimensions and below by anatomical outlet. Its plane is called plane of least pelvic dimensions or narrow pelvic plane. So the outlet plane is called the plane of least pelvic dimension. You can see the shaded area, that is called the obstetric outlet. The obstetrical significance of the plane of least pelvic dimension. It is the narrowest plane in the pelvis. The plane corresponds roughly to the origin of levator muscles. It is at this plane that the internal rotation of the fetal head occurs. It marks at the beginning of forward curve of the pelvic axis. It is a landmark used for pudendal nerve block in analgesia. This level of ischial spine indicates station 0. It is irregularly oval and notched on each side by ischial spine. So these are the various significance of plane of least pelvic dimensions. Next is regarding the anatomical outlet. It is otherwise known as bony outlet. It is bounded in front by the lower border of symphysis pubis, laterally by ischiopubic rami, ischial tuberosity and sacrotuberous ligament, and posteriorly by the tip of the coccyx, and its shape is diamond shaped. So you can see the picture of the anatomical outlet. Next is subpubic angle. It is formed by the approximation of the two descending pubic rami. In normal female pelvis, it measures about 85 degrees. Pubic arch. The arch formed by descending rami of both sides is of obstetric significance. Normally, it measures about 6 cm in between the pubic rami at the level of 2 cm below the apex of the subpubic arch. Clinically, it is assessed by placing 3 fingers side by side. Next is another term, very important, waist space of Morris. So before hearing this, just go to this picture. You can watch this picture and then listen to the explanation. Normally, the subpubic arch is rounded and less space is wasted under the symphysis pubis. When a round disc of 9.3 cm diameter of a flexed head is, that is 9.3 cm, is placed under this arch, the symphysis pubis, and the circumference of the disc is measured. This measurement is called the waist space of Morris and should not exceed 1 cm in a normal pelvis. So you can see the waist space when a disc is kept, that is the waist space of Morris. So that's all regarding the fetal skull and maternal pelvis, the important points which is required for various multiple choice questions. So study well, stay focused and achieve your aim. Thank you. If you have not subscribed this channel yet, kindly subscribe this channel by clicking the subscribe button below.